On today's NESN Soccer Show, Marcus and I will talk about the Champions League semifinals and break down Bayern Munich versus Real Madrid, Roma versus Liverpool, who deserves the most credit, and what to look for in the Champions League final.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Hello and welcome to the NESN Soccer Show. My name is Mark. Your name is Marcus, as always, and we're back with another semifinals of the Champions League recap. This time, second leg is complete. A lot of talk about refereeing and maybe things that didn't actually take place on the field, but we're going to try our best to keep it on the field. We're going to start with Bayern Munich versus Real Madrid before we get into Roma versus Liverpool, and then kind of give our first impressions of the final, which takes place later in the year, later this month, right?
May 26th
May 26th in
Ukraine.
Kiev. The Ukraine, beautiful. Marcus is powering through a bit of an illness right now, so I am very proud of him, and I know he's gonna bring it. But Bayern Munich versus Real Madrid. Bayern Munich goes out in the semifinals once again, starting to be a bit of a trend, it seems like, for them. And I'm sure they don't like losing to Real Madrid of all teams in European play. But at the end of the day, they really had a lot of injuries pile up on them, and I think maybe did a little better than expected, or put up a little bit more of a fight in the second leg, tying 2-2, and really had a good chance to tie it up on aggregate and advance on away goals. But I was expecting maybe Real Madrid to kind of take care of business at home and maybe come out with like a 2-0, 2-1 victory and not really have too much of a scare of being eliminated, of facing elimination. So did you get the same feeling when you kind of saw the final score and then all the maybe sort of storylines afterward, and Bayern Munich thinks they didn't necessarily get the best shake?
No. Bayern Munich, they were their own worst enemies. They had 33 shots over 2 legs.
That's a lot.
Only scored 4 goals. I think Real Madrid might have had 14, 15, 16, thereabout. Bayern Munich, they controlled a lot of play. They created a lot of chances, but their money players, Robert Lewandowski, Thomas Muller, they couldn't convert the biggest ones, and I think that was really the difference, where Real Madrid were a lot more clinical and a lot more, just a lot more efficient in their attack. Bayern Munich did a lot of good, but yeah, ultimately they were too wasteful. So we've seen stuff like this before, and I was just looking at Bayern Munich's recent seasons: semifinal exit in the Champions League this year, quarterfinal in 2017, lost to Real Madrid, semifinal in 2016, semifinal in 2015, semifinal in 2014, winners in 2013,
right,
runner-ups in 2012. So they've been in or around, the biggest games these years, but they just can't seem to get over the line.
And I think you kind of said it with the biggest players not converting, and it's not like they didn't. I wouldn't say there were no shows. It's not like they were, they blew it, but it's kind of just, if you're going to win the Champions League, if you're going to beat Real Madrid, it's going to be your best players that do it for you and take their game to the next level.
Sure.
In the biggest moments. And when that doesn't happen, and when you have injuries to players that could potentially be doing that, that list of players when Thomas Müller has the help of Arturo Vidal and Arjen Robben, maybe it's easier for him to have that magic moment. And when he's out there without that help, it just makes it all the more difficult. And maybe not quite enough firepower, despite putting up a really good fight. And Real Madrid, at this point, it's not like they're cruising through the tournament either. which is why I think we're in for a very good final. I think the fireworks will return. But getting to Real Madrid, Cristiano Ronaldo.
Can we slow down for 1 second? There's one thing that I would be remiss if we didn't talk about, and that is Sven Ulreich's mistake. The Bayern goalkeeper made just one of the worst goalkeeping errors you'll ever want to see. In the I think it was 21 seconds into the second half, Bayern Munich were, I think it was 1-1 at the time, and I think I went to the bathroom at halftime,
right,
and came back, and it was 2-1, and I said, "Oh, shoot, I missed the goal," and it was just terrible. It was atrocious. A back pass from Tolisso that, maybe it shouldn't have been made, but I couldn't help but think if Manuel Neuer's there, he deals with that pass infinitely better than Sven Ulreich, who, by some accounts, was the best goalkeeper in the Bundesliga this season in Manuel Neuer's absence. But it is in these moments that, you want your biggest players and your money players out there on the field. And, Ulreich kind of showed what can happen when your backups are in overtime.
Yeah. And we said we don't want to talk about the refereeing, but I think just in this case, one of the problems was that Bayern thought, or a lot of Bayern Munich supporters were thinking that they deserved a penalty for a handball right before halftime. And I wonder if maybe the players, they go into halftime and they're all sort of upset about this decision, and then they come out and right off the bat, as the second half begins, they aren't maybe as 100% mentally ready to go as they would have otherwise been if they had been granted a penalty and scored, but if just that situation hadn't taken place and they were just still focused on what they need to do on the field. And that does go all the way back to the goalkeeper. And it's, maybe just that mental edge right off the bat was allowed Real Madrid to get the ball into the position that it was. And that's as most as I'm going to say about refereeing until we talk about Roma Liverpool.
Yeah, maybe, but I would say no.
Yeah.
The mentality required to get to that point in the Champions League isn't one where you dwell on a referee's error from the first half.
Right.
But I don't know. I didn't play at that high of a level.
Well, Real Madrid had a pretty big team effort to put this one to get to the final. Ronaldo, 0 goals, 0 assists over the 2 legs. Marcelo with a goal and Marco Asensio with a goal in the first leg, and then Karim Benzema with 2 goals in the second leg, and they needed all 4 of them. But as much as much attention as Cristiano Ronaldo gets, how encouraging is it, I think, for the team and the club to see 4 goals come from 3 different players, and Ronaldo
not named Ronaldo.
Yeah, statistically not involved, although of course he requires an enormous amount of attention and everything. But these other players are stepping up, and kind of like the opposite of what we said about Bayern, where maybe they were just not able to put everything together for those magic moments. You're getting some players that really are world class providing those magic moments.
Yeah, it's a good recap. Bayern shut Ronaldo down.
Yeah.
We'll come out and say it. I'm not sure how they did it, but he was relatively anonymous for his, over the 2 legs. But yeah, Real Madrid's got world beaters in other positions.
Yeah. Like
Marcelo, like Marco Asensio.
I love Marcelo, by the way.
Best left back in the world. Real Madrid, guys like Toni Kroos and Luka Modric. You could just go through the lineup. They were a little bit more potent than Bayern's supporting players, and I think that was really the difference in this tie.
I guess the idea was we're going to make somebody besides Ronaldo beat us, and they did.
It's a great game plan.
But
Ronaldo's influence, at Real Madrid and on what they do it's declining. He's 33 now, so he's not taking over every game and running it, but Real, he's surrounded by great players, and each of the ones you mentioned kind of showed. Even a guy like Benzema, who I don't think he started the first leg, and he's only got 10 goals in all competitions this year. Really had a bad year. Some people are saying that he might be done at Real Madrid after this year, but in the big moments, he was there, like when Ulreich gave him the ball.
Right. Well, we kind of touched on it before, but Bayern Munich hasn't reached the final since 2013, and that is their standard. Their standard is to be in the final.
Yeah.
So what changes do you think are coming, and do you think that they were coming anyway, or was it purely a result of what has taken place by not reaching the final?
Changes, they're going to have a new coach, Niko Kovac, who's coming from, I believe, Eintracht Frankfurt this summer. How well he'll do in that pressure cooker remains to be seen. I don't think this loss will make Bayern react any differently than they would otherwise do. That's a club that's never standing still. They're always trying to improve in certain positions, buy certain players from other German teams, and now Spain every now and again. But I don't think they're going to overreact to this loss. It was close. It was by 1 goal. They were missing Neuer, Boateng, Arturo Vidal, Arjen Robben. About half their team, they were out with injury. So I think Bayern Munich will expect to get right back to this place next season and maybe win it.
Okay, well, on to Roma versus Liverpool, which I think was more entertaining. I mean, there's 13 goals scored.
Wow.
But
which is a record.
Is it a record for one?
For a semifinal,
Yeah.
Yes.
The first leg was kind of the Mo Salah story with 2 goals, 2 assists, and then kind of everybody was like turned their heads when Roma scored 2 in the late stage of the game. But I think still, and proved true that nobody thought Roma was going to be able to overcome the 3-goal deficit in the second leg, which was correct. But it's kind of, story of 2 games. The second leg is kind of marred by all this chatter about officiating and another potential handball situation, and also, I guess, a penalty maybe could have been called on the Liverpool goalkeeper. But James Pilata, the owner of Roma, came out and was very strong, and he's kind of a pretty outgoing guy in the first place. And, he jumped in the Trevi Fountain, and he's made headlines in his own right before Roma was ever in the Champions League. But he said, if we don't get VAR in the Champions League, I'm quoting now, if we don't get VAR in the Champions League, stuff like this is an absolute joke. We don't want to linger on it too much. And the thing is, when you watch...
Is that the whole quote?
Well, I don't want to... Should I read the whole thing?
Yeah, read it out.
All right, let's see. It's absolutely clear that VAR is needed in the Champions League because you can't let stuff like this go. You can all look at yourself. Dzeko wasn't offside, got taken down for a penalty. At the 65th minute, there was a handball that was obvious to everybody in the world except those on the pitch. In the 67th minute, shit gets taken down in the box. I know it's difficult to ref, but it's really embarrassing when we lose on aggregate like that. Again, congratulations to Liverpool. They're a great team, but if we don't get VAR in the Champions League, stuff like this is an absolute joke. If you look at all of these plays, they're, for lack of a better term, bang-bang plays. And when you slow it down, okay, you can make the case. But it's not even, the handball official rule is kind of, it's up for interpretation when a ball is kicked and it hits a player's hand, and it's like it's never, even in slow motion, hard to tell.
Mark, I'm going to let you finish. But do we need VAR in the Champions League?
Well, I think eventually it's going to be there anyway. I think eventually every major league will have it.
Do we need it? When? How long? At what point does the Champions League need VAR?
Now.
It's going to be in the World Cup this year.
Right.
And I have a feeling that that's going to make it palatable to soccer fans around the world. And yeah, it's almost like the Champions League was playing a year behind the times, where they should have had it this year and they didn't. And UEFA goes with, what do they have, 5 officials on the field or something like that? There's one on the goal line as well.
That's all. And I think the Premier League has already said they're not going to have it for their 2018-2019 season.
That's correct.
So, but yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of like all other major sports, especially here in the United States, that these, like, video replay is coming. And, you know, as much as people object to it before it actually comes into the sport,
right?
Like, it's, you know, kind of
it's going to happen.
It's fighting the tide,
right?
And you know, Pilata might have a point, but I want to get back to what happened on the field. Roma was down 5-0 at one point on the total score of these two legs. Regardless of whether it's home or away goals, to let yourself get into that situation. And I understand Mo Salah is an incredible player, but Roma is a world-class team, and they got it wrong to go down 5-0. I don't care who you're playing. And to climb out of that hole, everything has to go right for you, including the refereeing. And you never want to put yourself in the position where the refs have to get every call right in order for you to come back. Because that's not going to happen. Even with VAR, it won't happen.
Right.
So it's still on Roma, and it's still on that first leg going down 5 goals, and that's why they aren't advancing.
5 goals in 30 minutes.
Yeah.
And everything else was just window dressing.
Unfortunately. Although they did, you know, I mean, they scored in the 94th minute, their 4th goal. So, I mean, it was too little too late, obviously. But they put up a fight, and I did think that they were going to win the second leg all along. I didn't think they were going to score 4 goals. I thought they'd win like 2-1. But, yeah, it was entertaining. Yeah. And I think Liverpool-Real Madrid in the final will be pretty great. And Jurgen Klopp is still a relatively fresh coach at Liverpool, and he came in so incredibly hyped, and he's, you know, very outgoing manager and has his large reactions and tells the fans to cheer louder and all of that. But how much, obviously he deserves a ton of credit for their success, but what does it mean for him to reach the Champions League final this quickly with Liverpool?
It means that I guess the hype is justified. When Klopp came to Liverpool in, I think it was October 2015, you know, he came with a big reputation, but also a big challenge. And I think he's done a lot of things right since then. How much credit does he deserve for Liverpool reaching this point? You know, all of it. He's the manager. I'm sorry, what was your question?
Oh, no, you answered it. How much credit does he deserve? And maybe also something along the lines of where does this elevate him in the ranks of the coaches or the managers around the world? Not so much, because maybe he also caught lightning in a bottle with Mo Salah having this incredible season, and
I think it does. Klopp was always in the, I would say, tier 1A of coaches. He was never up there with the Guardiolas and the Mourinhos, and you could even maybe say the Ancelottis of, you know, coaches who have won multiple UEFA Champions Leagues. But, you know, among the next tier of coaches who you think are likely to win one over the next 5 years, he's in there. Now, if he wins this one, you know, it sets up Liverpool's real challenge, or I don't want to say real challenge, but maybe their bigger challenge, which is winning the league for the first time since 1988, winning the Premier League. You know, Klopp has built a team that's very explosive, very formidable, and can run with anybody in Europe on their day. But there's a difference between, you know, sometimes this term is used derogatorily. They call them a cup team versus a real juggernaut that can sustain a high level over the course of a league season.
Right.
But, you know, let's say Liverpool wins this final or even loses it, I think the expectation will be that Liverpool challenges for the Premier League next season.
Yeah.
And, yeah, that's Klopp has taken them to that point. You know, I
And are you saying if he's able to bring them to that point? Are you sorry?
I'm not really saying anything.
Well, like if he were to win the Premier League title, that would
win the Champions League title.
Well, I'm saying then maybe winning the Champions League title, as great as that doesn't necessarily put him into that top tier. What
not
does
in the,
that?
Not in the pantheon of Liverpool coaches.
Right. What does that is winning the league.
Yes.
That's what you're saying.
That's what I'm saying.
All right.
Winning the Champions League is great, and you know Liverpool hasn't won it since 2005, and Liverpool fans still love Rafa Benitez and you know worship the ground he walks on. So I mean, winning these European cups it's great, but you know the Holy Grail and what Liverpool really wants is that Premier League title.
Right.
And yeah, Klopp has all the support and all the backing, and yeah, he's done a great job.
You said 1988. They did win in '88. Their most recent is 1990. As I look at the list of
1990.
Oh no, I guess they won 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 titles five in the '80s and then in 1990 as well.
1990 was the last one.
Yeah.
Okay, 28 years.
Not bad.
Liverpool fans have been waiting for a Premier League or an English league championship, and yeah.
Well, I don't want to we won't linger on this too much, but just a quick point on Roma and sort of their run to reach, and they're all obviously very upset right now and feel that they should be advancing to the final. But their run to the semifinal, I think, was extremely unexpected, even more so than Liverpool's run to the semifinal and final. Obviously, the upset against Barcelona is something that will be remembered forever in the great history of AS Roma.
Mm-hmm.
But I think also the notoriety, and you get obviously a big paycheck by reaching these games. But beyond that, the notoriety of playing Barcelona over the course of 2 legs in a quarterfinal of the Champions League, and then playing Liverpool, a gigantic English club, over the course of 2 legs in the semifinal. I mean, there's so many eyeballs on those games, and I think the value of just actually being in the games is going to continue to pay dividends for the next few years. But on to the final, unless you have something to say about that.
Will it?
I think so. I hope so.
Who was in the semifinal last year?
Was it Bayern, Real, Barcelona, and Juventus?
Monaco.
What?
Was in the semifinal last year.
Still fighting the sickness.
Yeah. The problem with reaching it's tough to tell what this really is going to do with Roma. I think it gives their current players great experience,
right.
And maybe they'll come back a little more battle-hardened next year. But I'm just looking at the Serie A standings. Roma is 18 points behind Juventus.
Yeah.
14 points behind Napoli.
They have not secured a top 4 spot for Champions
Yeah,
League.
they haven't secured Champions League soccer for next season.
It's looking okay.
I'm not gonna say this is a fluke. Them reaching the semifinals.
I wouldn't. I am expecting to hear that from many people beyond.
All right, I'll say it first. It's a fluke.
I would be surprised if they reach the semifinal again next season. Of course.
Right.
But
it gives them something good to build on.
It's something good to build on. I think they'll be closer.
Maybe
in the Serie A
they
table.
can attract a certain type of player that maybe they otherwise wouldn't have been able to. But Roma's still got a long way to go. 7 losses in the league this year. I don't know what did they do in the Coppa Italia.
They lost in the first game they played.
Oh boy. Yeah. So they had a good run.
Yeah.
Bravo to Roma.
It was the round of 16.
They still have a long way to go before.
Yeah.
If you ask me now whether they'll be in the knockout rounds next season,
I think to not make that,
maybe.
obviously it starts with actually qualifying for the tournament.
Right.
But to not make the knockout rounds, obviously,
resounding
you get a tough draw.
maybe.
But
yeah.
Anyway, Liverpool versus Real Madrid on May 26th in Kiev, Ukraine, their Olympic Stadium, whatever they call it. Third straight final for Madrid. Liverpool's first appearance since 2007. Their last win was 2005. Of course, Real Madrid has won the last two Champions Leagues. Let's start with Real Madrid and just the fact that they're in their third straight final.
Yeah.
What kind of an accomplishment is that? Can you put that into any sort of perspective?
Yeah, this Real Madrid team is one of the, we have to say, it's one of the greatest in their history and, all of European soccer. This group of Real Madrid players, 3 straight finals. I think they won one in 2014 as well. So,
Yep.
These
4 or
guys,
5 if they
Keylor
win.
Navas, I think Navas came the next year, but Ronaldo, Benzema, Bale, Sergio Ramos, the captain. These guys are all-time greats. Marcelo, and that's the perspective, is that Real Madrid didn't win the Champions League between, I think, 1998 and 2014, and they've come in and won 3 out of the last 4 so far, and possibly 4 out of 5. This is one of the greatest runs that you'll ever see.
Yeah.
Teams like this come around once every quarter century.
And that's what I think is the biggest thing going in this game, obviously, is I think last year was kind of, okay, now that you can call this one of the greatest runs ever.
Yeah.
And now it's, if you win this game, you're talking about, is this the greatest run of games or run of seasons for one single soccer club?
Yeah. That's really what they're going for. It's Real Madrid right now are chasing history. I think when the European Cup first started, they won the first 3, 4, 5. I can look it up very, very quickly, but the Real Madrid started off just winning and winning and winning, and this is from 1956 through 1960.
Wow.
So they won 5 in a row,
Right.
and this era right now is really just rivaling that.
This would be the first 3 straight winners since Bayern Munich did it from 1974 to 1976.
Right, and these are the teams that we talk about. When we think about all-time great teams, it's Bayern Munich in the 70s, Ajax in the 70s, Real Madrid in the 50s, and now Barcelona. In recent years, in the last 10 years. I mean, just some of the greatest teams ever. And that's who Liverpool will be going up against.
Right, that's what they're
Now,
facing.
Luckily for Liverpool, this Real Madrid team, I don't believe, is as good as last year's.
Yeah.
Maybe not as good as the 2014 team. Oh, no, they won it 2 in a row. Yeah, so last year, the year before, I think this Real Madrid group peaked, sometime in 2017. So they're probably on the downslide, but, they're there for the taking. Liverpool will have a lot of work to do to reach, to knock them off.
Mo Salah versus Ronaldo.
Yeah.
Those are the biggest names on each side.
Salah said it's not me versus
Right.
Ronaldo.
It's not.
Yeah, he said it's 2 great teams playing. But those are the players that everybody will be looking to for the key contributions.
Yeah.
Goals.
It's kind of like what we said earlier about in the Bayern Munich Real Madrid match.
Right.
Of stepping up, and you need your best players to be the ones that
Right.
produce.
These are the players the coaches will plan to stop.
And it doesn't even necessarily mean scoring the goal or, laying off a perfect assist, but it's just doing the don't let your play slip at all in this game.
Yeah.
Like Mo Salah should have, one of the 5 best games of his season, even if it doesn't show up on the stat sheet, just causing problems all over the defense for Real Madrid, so that other players can step in and score the goals if it's not him. And Ronaldo kind of more or less did that already in the semifinal, allowing 4 other players to score. Who do you think has the coaching advantage, Jurgen Klopp and Zinedine Zidane?
Zidane.
Do you say that simply because he just has, even though it's only his 3rd year as coach, this is his 3rd time in the
when
final?
I was talking about the top tier of coaches, I'm actually ashamed I left Zidane off.
Yeah.
Because
he's earned it.
I mean, we talk about Mourinho and Guardiola and them, but yeah, Zidane's won 2 Champions Leagues, and I mean,
are we getting to the point where we could say Zidane might be a better coach than he was a player?
Remember when I asked you that last week?
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
You did, yeah.
You didn't answer.
Yeah.
What about now?
I think.
I'm assuming you haven't.
Let's wait again.
You haven't pondered that question all week, but yeah.
I'll ponder it heading into this game, and then we'll see how.
I mean, I've seen Zidane's in-game changes. I've seen in just the last, in the last few years, how he just changes games with, one timely substitution. I think they have a bit of an advantage on that front, and I really rate Klopp highly. But yeah, Zidane is, he has this cool under pressure that you can't really, I think that adds a little bit of something. So even when the game's not going well in the first half, he'll come into the locker room and say, you do this, and that's it.
I think it's funny that I just stood up out of my chair and you sat back down. Cohesion. Yeah. But, all right, we didn't want to go too deep on this final because there's still so much that's going to happen before the game even takes place.
Yes.
And you can't really predict anything at this point. But what other on-field storylines do you have before we wrap up that maybe stick out right away?
Other than the Salah, Ronaldo, Zidane, really, I think for me it's a matter of experience. Real Madrid's players they've been through so much and they've won so much, and then Liverpool's players just, nobody saw this coming. I bet somebody at the beginning of the season that Liverpool wouldn't reach the quarterfinal. I then went double or nothing on them reaching the final after the quarterfinal. Nobody. I didn't think they were ready for this, but they've just grown by leaps and bounds and gotten so much better after selling Philippe Coutinho in January. They've just, this is a Cinderella run of their own. But, I look at Liverpool's lineup and how many of them have been in either European finals or even domestic finals. Very few.
Right.
Karius, Andy Robinson, Virgil van Dijk. I think he played in the League Cup final last year for Southampton, where they lost. Right. Trent Alexander-Arnold, I don't think is growing facial hair yet. James Milner's probably been in some. Jordan Henderson might have been on the losing end of the Europa League final. Liverpool players just don't have a lot of experience in these monumental games.
Right.
And then Jurgen Klopp has lost his last 5 finals with Liverpool and Dortmund. So I think experience will be the number one factor in the outcome of this game. How does Klopp counteract what Zidane and his players have?
Right.
I don't know, but that's his job.
Yeah. Well, I think that does it for us. We're going to preview the Champions League final the week of the game when we actually can have somewhat of a clearer look on what it might look like. And I'm pretty sure we'll recap it as well. Until then, we'll be keeping you posted on all of the soccer news every week. still a few weeks to go until that final. So
Yeah, 23 days.
yeah, Marcus, I want to thank you for powering through your sickness today.
Yeah.
I think you did a fantastic job.
Thank you.
And thank you, listeners, for sticking with us to the end. You can follow us, NESN.com/podcast, and on iTunes, search NESN, and you'll find all of our podcasts there as well as all other NESN podcasts. Thank you for joining us, and have a good weekend.